Parliament last week unanimously passed the country's first ever social protection bill, making a major milestone in strengthening social protection systems. Now, the legislation established a comprehensive legal framework under the Ministry of Employment, Labour and Social Security, addressing critical gaps in existing programs and enhancing coordination across sectors. However, building on the 2018 social protection policy and the 2022-2026 strategy, the new law aligns with the African Union's framework on social protection. Now, it provides Sierra Leone with a unified system to better serve vulnerable populations nationwide. Now, so this morning to discuss this, I've been joined by Chible Francis Kamara. He is the Acting Commissioner of Labour, Ministry of Employment and Labour and Social Security, and Chelsea Heroes. Now, Chelsea is a General Secretary, Sierra Leone Domestic Workers Union in Sierra Leone. Good morning. It's a pleasure having you.
Good morning, viewers.
Good morning.
Indeed. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Mr. Chible, I've not read the act in its entirety actually, but I mean to understand that it promotes social and economic well-being, among vulnerable persons, establishing a legal and institutional framework. Can you please take us through some of the major highlights?
Thank you. Well, it is important we let the viewers know first of all what social protection is according to the law. But let me hasten to say that it has 9 parts. And then, well, the one I know, because it's the property of Parliament for now, 47 sections. Okay. And you have preliminary aspects that talks about the application of the law and then interpretation, etc., going to establishment of the National Social Protection Authority, social protection floors, social protection fund, etc., etc. Then provision for appeals, complaints and appeals, etc., etc. Well, the law defines social protection as a set of policies and programs, that are meant to reduce poverty and vulnerability by promoting efficient labor market, diminishing people's way of making sure that they don't expose themselves to risk, and then enhancing their capacity to be able to prevent income loss, etc., etc. That is what social protection is. And then when you go through the law, you realize that it provides for the establishment of an authority that has provision for a board set up, comprising something like 21 institutions, representative from 21 institutions, including the permanent secretary in the VP's office, the vice president office, and professional heads from various institutions, including Ministry of Employment, Labour and Social Security, Social Welfare, Ministry of Planning and Economic Development, Gender and Children's Affairs, Ministry of Youth Affairs, Ministry of Health, etc. And then some Director Generals in certain institutions, for example, NACID, National Commission for Social Action. So, social protection is wide-ranging, hence it is like that. And then also, the Act provides for the board to set up committee as and when necessary to enable it effectively execute its functions. And then it goes on further to make provision for the establishment of Social Protection Technical Committee comprising certain institutions, Ministry of Information and Civic Education, local government, community affairs, etc., etc. So that is how the structure is. And then you also have aspects that speak to the administration of the authority itself, that will that provides for the appointment of the Director General by His Excellency the President, subject to approval by Parliament. And then the functions of the Director General are in there. That will include, for example, managing the affairs of the authority, including disciplining the staff that are in there, facilitating the holding of board meetings, etc., in which he is going to be the secretary of that, keeping minutes of the board meetings, etc., etc. So that is what, and then also there is provision for appointment of a deputy director general that will be principal assistant to the director general. From time to time, he will be assigned with tasks by the director general of the authority once it is established. And then you have also provisions for the auditor general or his representative, his or her representative, to come in between time to do the needful in terms of auditing, produce a report, etc., etc. And then, of course, there are also provisions for the authority to keep books of accounts, as you would any institution. If you want to do your job well, you have to keep books of accounts, balance sheets, etc., etc. So, and then, of course, there is also provision for implementing institutions, because there are several institutions that are involved in the delivery of social protection, as you indicated in your intro, but there is a challenge of coordination, effective coordination and cooperation among the actors in the field of social protection. So the law provides that once the authority is established, these implementing institutions will be submitting projects and programs to the authority. The authority will verify and assess, and based on the assessment, they will approve and then facilitate the release of funds to those institutions. And then once that is done, the authority have a whole lot of functions that the authority will be doing, including monitoring and evaluating those implementing institutions that are involved in the delivery of social protection. So that is the type of situation you have. And then, of course, because the Ministry of Employment, Labour and Social Security is going to be supervising the authority, there is provision for the minister to, through statutory instrument, increase the scope of applicability of the authority's work. How do I mean by that? I mean, say for example, it provides, the Act provides that social protection guarantees can be provided to, for example, children. So maybe and other vulnerable groups. So the in-between time, depending on the economic situation of the country, as it improves, the minister can decide to expand the scope of the target group. So those are the things that are in the, in summary, that are in the law.
That's quite exhausting indeed. Ms. Heroes, you're the General Secretary. How important would you say this particular law is for your community of people?
Good morning and thank you again. As the Commissioner was saying, the Acting Commissioner was saying, looking at the aspect of vulnerable groups, there comes in the domestic workers. They falls within this particular group. And so we think it's very timely because these groups have been neglected. If you look at the ILO recommendation 204, it talks about transition from the informal to the formal economy, which looks at all of those benefits, you know, being there for the informal workers, because formal workers have been enjoying all of these benefits, but for informal workers, it has been a challenge. So the aspect of the Act coming into play will give the authorities an insight into looking deeply into these vulnerable groups for which we falls, and we just think that it's timely, and we have now the power to hold them in ransom for what they have said, and I think it's a wake-up call for our nation, you know, because it looking at the whole aspect of the entire population, not just looking at those who are in the formal economy, but the entire aspect of the population for which we fall. So I think it's a very good thing the government has done at this time.
You know, domestic workers often, you know, operate in informal settings, and most times it makes it difficult for them to be included in, you know, legal protections.
Of course.
What changes do you think you need to do? I mean, internally, as an organization that would also cater for these kinds of people who are employed by informal settings, but the law would apply to them as well?
I think one thing we've done is that we've organized. Now we are formally a union for which the body of the union, which is the Sierra Leone Labour Congress, is part of the governing body that the acting commissioner was talking about. So I think we are right in this at this time. So we want to say it's a time that you don't need to say it's not in the law. The law is there, because most of the time when you want to access facilities that you know that other countries are enjoying, and then it's not a law in your country, it's difficult. You know, even though there's a ILO Social Security convention also that our country have signed up to, there are other conventions, you know, but bringing the act into play, I think gives us that right to say now we can access all of these benefits, you know, because if you look at the aspects of maternity, you know, how many domestic workers go on maternity for which this act will provide benefits for, you know, because if even they want to go on maternity, how is it going to happen? For the employer, they want somebody in their house to do their job. But for an individual worker, I am pregnant, I have to go on leave for maternity, you know, but most of the time they lose their job just because they want to add to their family, for which is wrong, you know. So I think the Act now will look into all of these and ensure that domestic workers enjoy these benefits.
Mr. Kamara, in most cases, employers tend to overlook the law, you know. Constant bastardization of the law is quite preeminent in Sierra Leone. Does the law compel people to, or force them to adapt to its tenets in any way?
Well, thank you for that question. You know, the drafters of the law are very smart. So when you go through generally legislation, you find words like shall, which is mandatory. And then when it comes to aspects of violation, they will tell you, for instance, violation of the law on conviction is liable to a fine, X amount, and then terms imprisonment or both, something like that. So yes, there are provisions for that. But I would say at this level, we still have some work to do, because the lawyers will tell you the law gives that general framework, but then you have now to develop regulations that will actually bring clarity to the law. On the broader scope, if you look at, for example, the Employment Act, number 15 of 2023, there are a whole lot of provisions in there. If you violate, so let's say, for example, Section 25, that speaks to the need for employers to establish separate bank account for payment of terminal benefits. Mm-hmm. If you don't go by that, and we take you to task, they find there is 300 months minimum wage. When I checked it, it's something like $10,000. And as you know, the minimum wage, with the passage of time, can go upward. So as it goes upward, that increases the fine on defaulters or violators of the law. So yes, when they're developing laws, that is what normally they do. Based on my experience, that is what I've seen. It is difficult to see a law that does not have penalties, because no matter what you do, there are certain people who want to, as you indicated earlier, will want to violate provisions of the law. Mm-hmm. So you need checks and balances in legal frameworks to be able to take care of those type of situations.
Ms. Heroes, how many members are you talking about in your organization at the moment?
For now, there is a whole lot of movement, okay, you know, because it's unregulated, it's unrecognized. People feel that it's a demeaned job. There's a whole lot of things. So there's a whole lot of movement that people will work for just a few months and just slay away. But there are people who have done this job for more than 5 years. Yes, so we cannot have a realistic data for which we think it's something that we need to do now, you know, so that we can help promote a decent employment for this particular sector. But because of the swear away, it's giving us a little difficulty to have an exact figure of the domestic workers. Yes, but there's a whole lot in this country, because you know you find them more in bigger towns. But there's a whole lot, because if you talk now of gender equality, women are out there doing their job. Know that there are domestic workers in there. From the office of the First Lady, you can find the domestic worker there, because they have to do the job for us to come out to do our work. So we know they're there, but we cannot prove a realistic data set now.
So in essence, you're saying that most of these people are not umbrellaed under your organization. They are not registered.
Well, it's a newly organization,
Okay.
so like we are now bringing many on board. So we are now going out to communities to register them, you know. But there's also this issue of their employers. They are afraid for their employers to know that they are part of a union, because employers see unions as a target. No, they should look at unions as protecting the workers and also creating efficiency for them, the employers. So it's a phase that we are in, but it's a gradual process for which we think, because for now we do a lot of things within the Freetown, and you can find them in Bo, you can find them in Kenema, those bigger towns, they are there. So we think we need to do more on this one.
Do you think that poses a problem to what you do? I mean, this general unacceptability of the existence of your organization. I mean, as you've said, most employers do not regard or fear for their workers to join your organization.
It does pose a threat, but it takes a lot of education for the employers to know that we are not a threat to them. We are just ensuring that this particular population enjoy their better terms and conditions of service, enjoy their basic rights. They themselves are enjoying their rights. That's why we recently had a meeting where the commissioner was there representing the minister, where we want a separate document that looks at the rights of domestic workers, which is the collective bargaining agreement, wherein the employers of the domestic workers and the domestic workers themselves can come on board and say, this is the minimum wage that government proposed. Of course, you cannot go below, but what can we do on our own part? This is what is expected for us as domestic workers and for us, the employers. What can we do? So it's a threat, but we can educate them, because not just for the domestic workers, but you yourself. Because don't forget that when you have a domestic worker that is under a union, that kind of responsibility is in the job. That kind of commitment is in the job. Because you also, as an employer, you also have your rights, wherein you can take it up, So you can also go and seek redress if there are issues. So for the perception, it's there, but we'll educate them to know that we are not a threat to you. We don't come to take anything from you, but to add up value to what the staff are rendering in your homes.
Mr. Kumar, how does the minister, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I
yes.
just wanted to say a quick one on that. The Employment Act, Section 12, provides that workers have right to form or join unions of their choice in order to further their social and economic interests. Employers, they cannot stop workers if they want to join a union. They don't have that right to stop them at all. That was just what I wanted to add.
Yes, so if I can add, they don't have the right, but for these workers, they're afraid of losing the job. So they just go behind the scene, take up the job. But the employer, you should also know that. So that comes the area that you should accept, because they will dare take the job when once there is an issue, they come and report, and then you will be there now facing all the penalties. So why not open up, give them the space to do what they should do?
But then I think the Employment Act is very clear also on that.
Yeah.
Fair termination, unfair termination, dismissal, unfair dismissal. So you don't just get up in the morning and say you are fired. Otherwise, that is not decent, because the job has to be secure.
Yeah.
So you must have a reason for terminating the services of a worker. And it has to be done procedurally. Yeah? Maybe you first start with verbal query, written warning, suspension on half pay. Then depending on the investigation, you can go to termination and maybe dismissal. But the burden of proof is with the employer. So gone are the days when you just get up and just terminate the services of a worker just like that. Now the Employment Act is fairly balanced. It's for the workers, it's for the employers also. So one has to be careful when taking decisions of that nature.
One might also argue that, yes, even though the law is efficient, we have beautiful laws in Sierra Leone, but people don't regard these laws. I asked earlier, how do you force compliance to the law?
So that is when we were establishing NACI 2001 thereabout, we facilitated the establishment of an industrial court. It is up and running. So industrial disputes, the relationship between the employer and the worker can get sour. That is what we refer to industrial disputes. So you find often workers file complaints with the ministry. We investigate to try to resolve. If we are not able to resolve, we forward the matter to the industrial court, which is a level of high court status. So that is what happens.
You see,
so there is redress mechanism, okay, that is provided for. Yeah.
People have power, but I'm not sure a lot of them know, the enormity of the power they wield, you understand, in the law or in these acts or legislations. I feel what again is lacking is sensitization. How vital would you say your sensitization has been regarding these issues?
I must be honest, we are not there yet, but what we have done is, as an institution, we have developed a concept note which we've shared with our social partners. By that I mean Sierra Leone Labour Congress and Employers Federation. Okay. We're expecting them. We've already written letters to them requesting for their input. Once that is finalized, we'll forward it to the ILO office here for funding. And once we get that, we want to have something like various forms of sensitization. It could be labor hour, it could be having jingles, it could be town hall meetings, etc., etc. That is on course. We are aware that there are a number of labor laws, bills that have been enacted into law. So we now have the responsibility to raise awareness, effective awareness. Once that is done, that in itself will act as a deterrent, because you as the employer, if you know that you are not supposed to do A, B, and C, and that if you do those, these are the penalties, sure, you will not engage in those type of things. Workers also, they have their own rights and responsibilities. Say, for example, you as a worker, if you know that if you engage in acts of gross misconduct, gross insubordination, gross breach of duty, the penalty for that is summary dismissal. And when we say summary dismissal, even if you've worked for 20, 25 years, you will not get a cent. So if workers are adequately sensitized, they know this provision, I'm sure the world of work in Sierra Leone will gradually become a better place. So you find that you'll have workers who will go to work on time, they will not engage in gross misconduct, for example, stealing, etc., etc. Because if you engage in that, what will it benefit you? Say, for example, if you've worked for 25 years, and after they've completed your end of service benefit, something like 200,000 or 300,000, and you go and engage in an act that you've taken something that the cost, if they quantify, is equivalent to 10,000. If you compare, it's not comparable, in fact. So you would rather decide not to engage in that act and then remain to be a better worker or a good worker, as the case may be. And then at the end of the day, get your end of service benefit, which will help you a lot.
Chelsea, for you to enjoy these legislations, you'd have to form a very strong synergy as well with the Ministry of Labour. How cordial has this relationship been?
So I think we are together with the ministry. The relationship has existed for a while, and there is this kind of support from the ministry for us. Whenever we call on them, they're always there. As I told you, last week we had a meeting and the commissioner was there representing the minister. So they are willing to support us, and we guess we have a good relationship.
Let me just add that as a long-standing member of the International Labour Organization, we have ratified Convention 144, tripartite consultation. So when we are developing, that is why you find most times, when we are developing our laws and policies, we're doing, for example, regional consultations. When you look in that room, you will find representative of Sierra Leone Labour Congress, Sierra Leone Employers Federation, and then Ministry of Labour, of course, representing government of Sierra Leone. So that is how we work. That is how we work. So I would say, without a doubt, that the working relationship is really, really very strong. It is becoming stronger by the day. So that is how we work.
See, the Act seeks to develop exit strategies as well, for beneficiaries.
Yeah.
How do you plan to do this?
Well, it is the authority now that is going to do that. But the rationale here is that because this social protection thing, as I said earlier, is to reduce poverty, vulnerability, and then all those type of things. Yeah. So we don't expect people to be in poverty in perpetuity. So they're going to now develop these structures once the authority is established to see how can we train some of these people so that they can become self-reliant or maybe employable. So by so doing, they will exit out of the social assistance program, if you like, so that those who are still in poverty will be taken on board. So that is the kind of exit strategy that they're going to develop in the authority once it is established. So they give you social assistance for a start, and then maybe, because it's going to comprise two aspects, the benefits and the schemes. On the scheme aspect, you find that you have skills training and employment. Yeah. So they'll say, okay, let us help in skilling these people, skilling, provision of tools, and by so doing, you are able to stand on your own, and then you'll be taken out of the bracket, and then they'll focus on those, and gradually you find out with the passage of time, lots and lots more people will benefit. So that is the type of exit strategy that is provided through the law.
Chelsea, this law also will be, establishing a protection breadbasket fund, for people of your kind. How do you plan on leveraging on this? Well, essentially, I think it will be utilized to address immediate needs of domestic workers. I mean, financing economic hardship and all of those kinds of things.
So I think the fund is there. I was engaging the commissioner. The fund is there for all vulnerable groups. So once you have a need, you can access the fund. So just like I told you,
for many, not only domestic workers.
Not only domestic workers,
okay.
They said vulnerable groups. Okay. And there's exit as we are working now on formalizing the informal economy. If you are formalized, you have more benefits, then you exit, and those who are still affected can still access it. But I think the fund is there available for all. And once you have it, as I was discussing with the commissioner, you can write a project and they assess the project and they can fund that particular project.
So the law provides for establishment of certain structures. You have the authority, you have the board, and then you have implementing institutions, then you have beneficiaries. So what will happen is the implementing institutions, say for example, Domestic Workers Union, or maybe National Commission for Social Action, will do a project or a program and submit it to the authority. The board will look at the project or program, verify, do their assessment, and once they are sure that it is, for example, in a sector that alleviates poverty, they will approve and release funds to that entity to implement. So what the beneficiaries will do in turn, they will apply to the implementing institution. They have the criteria that is going to be set, and then they will assess them, all of that. So that is why you find there is even a provision for complaint and appeal mechanism. So if you, the beneficiary, you apply for social assistance, for example, and you are denied for one reason or another, you can go through and seek redress. So that is why that fund is here. That is why they call it basket fund, sort of. So, and it's going to be funded by monies appropriated by Parliament from time to time, donations that will be made by individuals, organizations for social protection. Say, for example, His Excellency, the President goes out somewhere and they give him, maybe people give him, say, okay, we'll pledge certain amount for social protection. It will go into that fund. And then this implementing institution now, they will apply with their project proposals or programs, and then they will get those funds to implement the programs.
Chelsea.
That's the structure.
Okay. Chelsea, your workforce are scattered across the country.
Yeah.
They work in embassies, consulates, private homes, restaurants, even in government quarters, ministries and agencies in the country. It's such a very large population that you've still not been able to have a grasp of, to record or to umbrella them under your organization. It seems as though it's a very tasking, work for you, and you've been meeting in a lot of bottlenecks along the way in the execution of same. How do you plan on doing this? Because, as I said earlier, I mean, whatever benefits this community stands to gain can only be achieved if you've serialized, your membership. You've gotten hold of everyone, stand under your organization, so you'll be able to fight for them, and the law will be, efficient at its best.
Yeah.
So how do you plan on, growing or ballooning your membership? Because it seems pretty much a problem for you at the moment.
Yeah, as you're saying, we can call them individual workers and invisible workers. They're alone in their space of work, and they're hard to reach, they're hard to see. And it takes a whole lot, you know, because maybe in this area, you can just come within this area and there are just 5 homes that you can reach, and maybe you can just get 2, you know, so it's also costly and it's also time consuming. But it's our work. So we think we need to put our all to make sure we get them on board. And so we're going to meet different ministries to let them allow their domestic staff to be part of us, meet embassies, meet agencies. So we are now moving, and the meeting we had was on organizing, you know, because the organizing leads us to access all of these benefits. The numbers we have, we can give a data of it, and then we're able to access benefits. So we're using the peer approach, wherein they themselves reach out to their colleagues. And also we are also going out through the media is one means, and also reaching out to agencies, because we know even these NGOs, they also have their staff where they come in and they hire domestic staff for them. But these agencies, they are not registered with us as yet. So I think it's a tax, a daunting one, but it's a work, because for us, you to say you are a union, it's membership that causes you to exist. They are there. We already have numbers, but we need to reach out to get the more of them, because without them, the union cannot exist. So it's an ongoing thing, because every day you have new people that come on board. But I think using the media, the various forms of media, and going there on community outreach, I think will help us to access them.
Mr. Kama, aside your engagement this morning here on the AYV, what other concrete steps would the ministry be taking to ensure immediate implementation of this law?
Well, we'll have to be having meetings, because it will require financing to set up the authority, so continuous engagement and seeing how we would engage development partners to support in doing this, because that is the first thing you need to do to set up the structure. And then once you have the structure with skeletal staff from there, they can start rolling out the law. But first things first, let us get presidential assent first. The president has to give assent, presidential assent. After that, then we are good to go. So that is one thing. Last week, I think it was this week, the minister had a meeting with a representative of the World Bank. They discussed aspects related to the passage of the bill into law. So yes, we are moving gradually, because there's no point having a law without setting the structures and trying to see how you can implement the provisions thereof. So that is
Ms. Heroes, what challenges do you foresee? I mean, the law is almost, being implemented now. It's almost at the completion. So sooner the president assents, then it will become law in Sierra Leone. But implementing this will bring its own challenges in its wake. How are you prepared as an organization to, ensure, you implement this to the fullest?
As he was rightly saying, meetings, so we believe in educating the domestic workers themselves, because you also need to know your right. You need to know that this law is there and you need to access it. So we need to educate the beneficiaries themselves, the domestic workers, the workers, and also educate the employers. So as he was rightly saying, on popularizing the law after the assent of the president, we think that one is very, very key. The aspects of the employers, will be a challenge, but the law is there. There's a means to seek redress. There are penalties.
To maneuver that challenge? It's a pretty much big challenge for you.
Yes, it is. I think educating them on the availability of the law and the penalties if you don't comply, I think then you need to make decisions to come on board. Because if the law is there and you are going against the law, that is fine for you. And so why do you need to sit and wait to pay penalties than to just adhere to what the law says?
Chibi, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, well, she cannot do it all by her own.
Yeah.
She needs the support of, we call it the tripartite partners, Labour Congress, Employers Federation, the Ministry of Employment, Labour and Social Security. On the bigger picture, what we have started and we are continuing to do is to set up a digital platform. They call Labour Market Information System. The phase 1 is completed, but still lots of work needs to be done. Once that platform is up, that is where job seekers will go and upload their details. Employers will notify their vacancies. So you find out, to the passage of time, some of these things will be addressed, but for now it's a challenge. And of course there are adequate provisions in the Employment Act that speak to those type of things. The need for job seekers to register with the employment centers, etc., etc., the issue with the labor card. But what is going to make it a lot more easier is when we embark on effective awareness raising campaigns. That will do a lot of good, because the domestic workers and workers generally will know, and job seekers will know that they need to register with the Minister of Employment, Labour and Social Security. And from there, we should be able to get, if not 100% database, but close to 100% database about what is obtained in the world of work, which we will now use. We'll now use that information for a lot of other things, providing technical advice to other sectorial ministries, for example, technical higher education, to say, well, look, these are the type of jobs that are in the labor market for which we don't have Sierra Leoneans that can do those jobs. How can you relate to tertiary institutions to effect curricular change so that they introduce new courses that will ensure that when people go on. Because in the employment relationship, the first thing you need to do, first of all, is to build your capacity. And then you prepare yourself for you to be able to get a job. When you talk to some employers, they will tell you there is a skills shortage, you don't have X, Y, Z professionals, so you find that they import labor by way of work permit. So that is even more expensive for them. So that is what we are doing on the bigger picture. It will take time, but we are going with it gradually.
Chelsea?
Yeah, so as Commissioner is rightly talking about aspects of skills, you know, to be able to meet these demands, because you cannot say an employer should attend to all of these rights without you being efficient there, without you knowing what you're to do. So we are working in close line with the ministry. Of course, we are not alone in the work we are doing, and trying to see how we can source funds to capacitate domestic workers, because most employers complain of their inefficiency, their unprofessionalism. So if you are demanding or asking an employer to say, let's just say just the basic minimum wage to be paid for a staff, that person has to have the skill set to meet that target, you know, because even the employers that are coming from out, you know, to come and work here, they need somebody that knows how to attend to their needs. So I think it's something we are also working on to see how we can build the capacity of domestic workers, because we are aware that the employers, that's a challenge on their own part. When you say, oh, you have to pay, but the people cannot do the job. How can you tell us to do this? They don't know how to dress. They don't know how they don't have that interpersonal relationship very well with us. You know, they can just come as they like and just do anything they want. So it's something also we think it's a gap for which we need to attend to, so that all of these other benefits these domestic workers can attract them.
Yes, you're making a valid point, but I must say that minimum wage is law. So if it's law, you comply with the provisions of the law. That is the law. You don't pay a worker below the minimum wage. You don't. In fact, it's not only the minimum wage, because the minimum wage plus allowances, you find that you go well beyond that, because you don't just give 800. If it's just 800, then that is not it. What about the transport allowance as provided for under Section 79(1) of the Employment Act, which speaks to allowances?
A lot of people don't comply with
That's
these laws.
what I want to say.
A lot of people don't comply. It's a big problem in Sierra Leone. Most of these employers do not regard or even countenance the law. They just bastardize it breezingly, you know, trample on it. And what I wanted to ask even Chelsea is that, you see, in some of these cases, I think your organization as well should try to employ a legal mind, for instance, legal representation. Someone who would be pioneering or championing the issues of, you know, domestic workers in Sierra Leone. So, for instance, if a particular employer fails to pay the minimum wage and other incentives that come with it, you sue them to court.
Yeah,
make money.
Yeah, that one is a thought, but it's also something that is costly. So we are just doing we are just doing our little bit. But the ministry is there to support. Whenever there are rights violations, we go to them. They do assist.
You're spot on. This is an embryonic, you know, it's at the formative stage. Still a lot of work to be done. But you're spot on. In some countries, they have that type of situation. In those countries where the trade union movement is really very strong, they have legal representation to take up these matters. Yes.
Indeed. Let's see what our friends on Facebook have been saying, actually. They've been following for a while. I think I just have... So, Arnold Siemens is saying, good morning all. One of the key to transforming the city is to open the housing market. I'm not sure that is quite, related to what we're saying. There are a lot of African Americans, Nigerians, and that have the funds to buy spaces. Okay, so the union is useful when you have a cooperative organization. Big companies and government jobs may be, but for the private free market, temporary jobs, it's a joke. And that's perhaps the only, I think, thought I have from a viewer on Facebook. He's saying that when it comes to the free market and temporary jobs, it's a joke. I mean, it just speaks to what we've been discussing. They do not regard the laws. There is no harmonization. People just do things willy-nilly as they wish. And I feel that's one of the things that this law is about to, settle, if at all.
Yeah, because the private ones don't see, as, especially our own people, domestic staff, they don't see them that they are part of the law. That's a whole lot of thing again. You can tell an employer that domestic worker is to be paid just the basic. We are not talking about the other benefits. Be paid. No, how can you pay a domestic worker a minimum wage? That's a whole thing. How can you give domestic worker end of service benefits? So that's a whole challenge with the private aspect. So as we are rightly saying, with us targeting companies and all of that, I think we're going to go that far to get them there. But the challenge is with the private ones. They are very difficult, to handle, because they like see most of them, they complain that I'm paid the minimum wage. I am working, I'm paying the minimum wage, and then I have a staff at home. I also have to pay the minimum wage. How do I have to comply with this? It's a question, but it's also a thought for discussion where which all of us can come on board and sit
would have to assist.
But then it's an employment contract. If you don't have the capacity to employ, don't employ. Simple as that. But it's an employment contract. You fulfill, you go by the provisions of the contract.
This term leads to a high rate of unemployment or a high rate of side jobs, wherein people are taking the jobs just because of their livelihood. Because I want to leave. So if somebody says, oh, I don't have it, I can just go at the back there. Because even for us, even these labor things we are doing, you say, okay, come and pay this. They will say, okay, I don't need that person anymore. And that person will leave you and go back behind and say, please, if you can pay me this amount, I need it. But just like what I'm saying, the employer is at risk because the law is there waiting for you when there is an issue. This employee already knows that I have access to this. So I might take this because I want to leave. But after, when there are issues, when I want to seek redress, you have to pay all of these backlogs. So it's all about the employer complying. So that's the key thing.
Mosdi on Facebook is saying, I'm wondering how the union can afford any legal representation when the employment rate is very low. Will the government be assisting the union in pursuing any employer that is not adhering to the labor laws?
Of course, that was what I indicated earlier. Possibly that viewer or listener was not paying attention. I said, if a worker is aggrieved, they are at liberty to file a complaint with the Office of the Commissioner. And once we get that, these are things we get on a daily basis. Yeah. We investigate. And when we investigate, it's like a mini, I will not say a court, it's more like a mini court. You call the complainant, they give their own side of the story, ask questions. You also ask the employer, you explain. You look at the facts, you look at the law, and then you recommend. If it has to do with payment of end-of-service benefit, you compute and you tell the employer to pay. I've also participated in that type of exercise. You tell them to pay. And many times they pay because the alternative is, if you don't pay, the matter will be charged to court.
Because again, there is this justice delayed is justice denied. How speedy or efficient would you say this particular
well, that is where the challenge is, because the truth be told is we are really, really thin on the ground. And that is where I want to commend our superiors. They've moved very fast with a view to making sure that we recruit substantial number of staff. Because you cannot have a small number of staff and you expect to do a very big ministry like that. It's a huge challenge. The employment regulation will tell you within 21 days when you get this, you should be able to do it. But imagine an officer having 10, 15, 20 cases. That is where the challenge is, really. So for us, the best thing is to embark on preventive actions. Raise awareness, do periodic inspections. But even with that, logistics is a challenge. Had it not been for the support of World Bank when we did some concept notes and we were able to get some vehicles. You have to go out regularly, you inspect. If there are problems, you resolve them, then you wait, they degenerate into industrial dispute, which will take a lot of your time. Awareness raising, that is the way to go.
Final comments, just a few seconds.
So, you're out there as a domestic worker, please, you can reach outsource so that together we can access the opportunities that are there for you. And kindly, as an employer, you can also reach out and call on your domestic staff to be part of us. We are not here to fight with anyone. We are just here to make life meaningful, life valuable for a particular sector whilst they render efficient service for you. So please don't see us as a threat or as we are here to raise anything that is against you, because people come to my face directly and tell me, now you they can't tell where but they right. So that's the difficult thing, you know. But please, we are not here to cause any fight, but to just create sanity and give better livelihood to people, even as you create efficient service. So kindly reach out so together we can make all of this happen.
Chelsea Heroes, General Secretary, Sierra Leone Domestic Workers Union, many thanks indeed for coming. We've also been hearing from Chibli Francis Kamara. Now he's the Acting Commissioner of Labour, Ministry of Employment, Labour and Social Security. Well, this is where we'll end today's edition of your favorite program, Wake Up Sierra Leone.